And I'll hand it over right now.
Welcome everyone. This is Jessie Bell. Thank you for coming. This is our first community bike park meeting. So this is a really fun and exciting project. And we'll definitely have more community meetings as the project evolves. So in thinking about how best to approach the planning for a bike park, we put together a committee comprised of Land Bank staff members and community members who had interest and knowledge and experience in bike parks, as well as a Land Bank Commission representative. And just to introduce who those people are, it's me, Eleanor Antonietti, our Special Projects Coordinator, Rachel Freeman, our Director of Operational Resources, Emily Molden, Joe Topham, John Sipe, Ben Shampoo, Graham Burton, and Mark Donato, who's our Land Bank Commissioner on the committee. We issued a request for proposals for design services and selected a design team who is led by Horsley Witten. And specifically, it's Ellen Biggert and Brian Kuchar from Horsley Witten who are here today, and I'll let them introduce the rest of their design team.
Thanks, Jessie. We're super happy to be here tonight. This is a very exciting project for us. We do have a good working relationship with the Land Bank, and we're happy to continue working with their talented staff. As Jessie mentioned, with me here tonight is Ellen Biggert, and she's a senior landscape architect at the Horsley Witten Group and will be leading the design team for this project. We also have tonight is Jeff Highland. He's a founder of Ironwood Landscape Architecture and Planning. And we're super happy to be working with Jeff because not only is he an avid mountain biker, but he also brings years of bike park experience to our team, which will be helpful during the collaboration process. And also on our team, but not here with us tonight, is Corbett Tulip, and he's owner of Tulip Trails. They're a design build bike park company out of North Conway, New Hampshire, and he'll be providing constructability review during the bid process. And we also are very happy and pleased that we have Knight Ide on our team as well. He's owner of Ide Ride, which is a bike park design, construction, and consulting firm based out of East Burke, Vermont. And Knight will be, he'll help guide the conceptual design process and bring his vision to the project. So again, super excited to be here, and you'll hear a little bit more from Jeff and Ellen in a few minutes. But I think right now I'll just give you a little bit of background on the project and the goals. If you could just advance the slide, Ellen. Oops. Oh, I think we're going to have Jessie speak to this.
Yeah. So just to orient everyone to the project site, we were limited sort of to existing land bank properties, and this is basically a site in between Nobodere Farm Road and Bunker Road, in an area, you see where the orange dot is basically where the Nobodere ball fields are, that whole facility. And so on either side of Nobodere Farm Road, I know I've seen plans for future public recreation going into the right side of Nobodere Farm Road there. So this really is becoming more and more of a sort of recreational area. And of course you have Strong Wings right there on Nobodere Farm Road. And this is also, the site was chosen because it is formerly disturbed, which I'll show you in the next slide, but and many of you probably know that it's also in close proximity or right next, there's trails that lead right to the Middle Moors. And so it's a great launching spot to, hop on some trails there. So, and this was historically a motorbike track of some kind. And so there was quite a bit of disturbance at one time. It's grown in since then, but so those are the reasons. And I guess just the goals that we had a kickoff meeting with the committee, and we discussed these goals, which I'll let Brian walk you through, but they're really just sort of the initial goals, and these can be tweaked and modified as we take in community feedback and as the project evolves.
Thanks, Jessie. And as she mentioned, we anticipate that these may evolve through the process, but we identified these 4 main goals for the bike park, which is to create an area where people of all ages and abilities can use and progress in bike skills, create features that aren't readily available anywhere else on the island, provide a place for kids and teenagers to practice skills, and incorporate unique bike park elements to support bike skill development and confidence. And I also just want to mention, beyond the goals of the bike park, really the overall or overarching objective is to minimize the impact to the surrounding environment and to design a space that is really well integrated with the natural setting. And like much of the undisturbed land on Nantucket, the site is mapped by natural heritage for endangered species habitat. So we'll be working with NHESP as well to ensure that conservation, preservation, and protection are a top priority for this project. At this time, I think I'm going to turn it over to Ellen. And I will go through the scope and timeline. The project is really constructed in 4 phases. The first phase being assessment and concepts, which is where we currently are right now. And if you see the timeline, that's from April through basically July. The first community meeting is tonight, which we've highlighted below, and we'll be rolling out of this meeting into conceptual design. And we would anticipate our second community meeting sometime in early August, coming back to you with some concepts to get further input, then rolling into design development and permitting, which I mentioned as it relates to natural heritage. Hopefully wrapping the design and permitting phase up in November, coming back to the community again to show our progress prior to submitting for permitting to get final comments, then rolling into phase 3, which would be the development of the construction documents. And lastly, phase 4 in April of 2025 through July. So basically a year from when we started, with the intent of hopefully completing construction sometime at the end of the summer. Quite a few phases to go, and we're very early in this process. So we're looking forward to your input tonight.
Great. Thank you, Brian and Jesse. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
What is a bike park? So we keep talking about this quite a bit, and it's really the identified use for the property that Jesse had talked about and has been the main focus for some of the goals and other conversations we've been having. But basically, and Jeff might go into a little bit more specifics later on, it's an area or park dedicated to bike. And this can come biking, and this can come in many different ways and could be a few different sizes and scales. So as a part of this process, we're starting to identify the size that we want to do with input, which is why we want to gather as much input as we can. But then also what we will be including in this. So it's basically a dedicated area for biking, which could include skill development, different age levels, different things, but and we'll go over some more of those features in a little bit, or some more of the specifics, including these type of images. But the first thing that we did, as we do with every other project, is we want to take a closer look at the site that we have that we're going to be using to make sure we understand what's happening here. We get all of the background. Brian mentioned that we are really trying to have this community park, but still preserve the natural areas and build it into the landscape the best that we can. So far we've been doing background mapping, a desktop analysis. So we're just trying to find what kind of previous information is available for the site. We visited the site, started to do an analysis, basically looking at the information that we've gathered so far and what might be useful, and then starting to begin program development. So like, what kind of features do we want to be in here? How much area is this going to take? How would it affect the design? So that's kind of where we are in the process. So as you saw in the previous photo, and Jesse mentioned, the site has a lot of previous disturbance, and it's even more obvious when you kind of take the LiDAR imagery, and you could see where it looks like the site was kind of scraped across, which even lines up quite a bit with where the vegetation changes as well. as a part of our analysis has been a big part because we want to try to use some of this already disturbed area. So as we're starting to move some of these pieces, we're considering this to make sure we're not going back into an area that wasn't disturbed and then suddenly affecting that area. So here's just another photo from our site visit. You can actually see Jeff down here, I'm pretty sure, with the drone imagery that just helps us get like an overarching view of everything that you could see. And you can even see how the site is still being used with some of the tracks that are in here for some of the motorbiking or other things, and some of those trails that you could see that headed out in other directions. And then, as Jesse mentioned, as a part of the background information, we're looking at other things that are connecting to the site. So she mentioned the Middle Moors and this extensive trail network that this site can connect to, which is important, one, for people getting to the site and being able to access it that way, but also just the recreation area that it's connected to. So it's not just coming to this park, it could be coming to this park and connecting to other trails and a whole network of things, which makes it a great location in itself. And then topography for what we're considering for the site too. So as you can see, there's an area that's relatively flat, generally towards the center where there was disturbed, with some little undulating areas, but then towards the back, it kind of drops off and gets very steep. So that helped us determine as well if we want to try and stay away from that northern corner. And then environmental constraints. So as Brian mentioned, we will be working with natural heritage here. The site has been flagged for priority habitats for rare species. We've started some coordination where we have some of those species, and we're going to be having a meeting with them shortly to go over kind of site disturbance and what we should do, or the best practices for what we should be doing to make sure we're not causing more harm for some of these habitats. And this is just the start of or a look at some of the analysis things that we were also collecting. So we had the larger connectivity trail map out to the moors, but also on site, there's a bunch. So this just highlights some of the major ones, but there's a bunch of existing trails and pathways coming through here, in part from the potentially motorbikes, and then it also looks like some smaller or it looks like much smaller trails as well too, as well as I'm sure you've seen in other areas. It's just crossed with a ton of deer trails everywhere. But at least getting a hierarchy of some of our existing spots. So off of Barnard Road down here, there's an existing trailhead that connects out to the rest of the network right now, but then also has a major path that comes in and connects out to that larger disturbed area towards the center, and then continues out as well. But then also other opportunities where it connects out towards that rest of the trail network. So even cutting through the site right now, there's a bunch of trails at different hierarchies that we could potentially use or consider when we are starting to pick where features should go or where they should be placed. You even see kind of the difference if this is a major cut through. There's kind of some of these smaller trails like here, and then they get even smaller from there. So with all that information so far, as we mentioned, we're not in concept yet, but we've started to talk about what areas we want to try to focus on when we're putting these parks together. So really this bright yellow area is a spot that we've talked about for trying to stay near the disturbance. If we're trying to keep it closer to this 5 acres of disturbance, depending on how we can fit in these the features as we develop the program or which bike elements we want. And then also connecting out to the Barnard Road or where we believe the trailhead's going to be. So if there would have to be some type of an entrance from this location or improvement there, or how do we have people accessing the site? But generally, this is the project area that we've been looking at to meet some of those goals that we've had before, as well as staying out of buffer areas, such as the buffer area off the street, the steep area that heads out to the north that was previously undisturbed, and then trying to keep that natural aesthetic. So from there, I'm going to pass it to Jeff to go over some biking elements.
All right, excellent. Yeah, so now that you've heard a little bit about the site and, maybe some of you have actually been out to the site to experience it, um, I'm going to talk a little bit more about bike park specifics. And, when we design bike parks, we always start with a good understanding of the site. And the site dictates a lot of the design direction that we take when it comes to bike parks. We always try to kind of work with nature as much as possible, but then also incorporate a lot of other features within that design. So you can switch to the next slide. Ultimately, the design approach is to create a fun environment, right? Nobody wants to go someplace to a facility like this that isn't going to be exciting and fun and provide a variety of opportunities or experiences. So any bike park design needs to understand the users and what they want to get out of the facility. And based on the goals and objectives that we've outlined, it is quite a diverse group that we're trying to target here. Everything from very young children who are just starting to ride a bike that maybe need to develop skills and confidence to older, more experienced riders that need features that challenge them and provide that level of excitement that they're looking for. So it's really it spans the whole gamut of goals and objectives when it comes to a bike park design. So next slide. So one element that's in many bike parks is a pump track. Pump tracks kind of originate back to the days of BMX riding. They've evolved a lot since then, and they've been fine-tuned. They're really, they utilize momentum and the pump action of a bike, in particular a full suspension bike, to move cyclists around a track using momentum. You can see some examples of rollers, which are basically just what they are, is rollers, as well as bank turns, and even some jumps are incorporated into this. And all of those features kind of create that momentum and allow a cyclist to kind of ride around this feature without pedaling significantly. It's kind of carrying the momentum that you've developed through these features. It takes some practice to be good at a pump track, and that's what makes them kind of exciting, because it's something that you build a skill with over time, and you get better and better at it the more you do it. Next slide. And within a pump track, oftentimes there are jumps, and as I mentioned, bank turns and other kind of features that are incorporated. And that's going to be kind of a theme of my discussion, is like a bike park is really a variety of elements that are put together in an exciting way. So pump tracks have jumps, pump tracks have bank turns, and then the trail system will also have elements like that I'll go into more detail. But here's an example of jumps. Some of these could be incorporated into a pump track. Some of these might be incorporated into a trail system. And then sometimes there are standalone elements, such as upper right, that's more of a jump line, where you have a series of jumps in tandem. So next slide. And then oftentimes you want to incorporate a younger children's specific area, because younger children obviously have specific needs related to bicycling. They're not as confident on bicycles. Perhaps they don't even know how to ride a bicycle. A bike park can provide the opportunity to learn how to ride a bicycle, and learn to ride a bicycle with other peers around them, with other parents around. Can really create a nice community experience for the younger rider just learning. One element that we're showing here is a traffic garden. That's an element that actually promotes roadway safety in a non-roadway environment, because as a young rider, you don't necessarily want to learn how to ride on a street, while you're on a street. It's nice to have kind of an opportunity to kind of learn about signs and graphics on the roadway in a controlled environment. And that's actually what a traffic garden does. There's also an example of the pump track. That's more of a wooden kind of downscaled pump track. And these are all elements that would be kind of scaled down for a younger user group to promote that skill development. Next slide. Within a trail system or even a pump track or any of the features I've mentioned, you can incorporate different types of materials. And so for example, stone can be used throughout a bike park, and it achieves a number of benefits. It can create challenge. If it's not flush, if you have some stones projecting out of the ground, that can require, some skill to get around or hop over. But stone can also be really beneficial in armoring a trail to be a more sustainable trail tread, so that you don't ever see erosion, or even high use tends to basically armor the trail system, requiring less maintenance and a more sustainable system of trails. Next slide. And then wood can be incorporated also into a bike park, throughout a bike park. These are usually standalone kind of elements. You might have a large bank turn made out of wood. You may have a bridge made out of wood, and an arching bridge can be even more kind of exciting than a flat bridge. All of these, the design of these wood features lead to kind of a different user experience, a different level of excitement, enthusiasm, and some of them require certain skills to be able to negotiate. So oftentimes in a trail system, you might incorporate, let's say, an arch bridge, and that might be one option as you're coming down a trail. But then you also have a secondary option, or an A line and a B line is what we generally term them, so that you accommodate different skill levels. So a rider that's more skilled might be confident enough to go up over the arch bridge, but a less confident rider would have easily can go around it on a beeline trail. Elevated boardwalks, again, can be kind of exciting kind of user experience, but they can also be great at bridging sensitive environments. So if poorly drained soils, or even vegetation that you want to try to minimize any disturbance, boardwalks can be great ways of doing that. And one of the things I love about boardwalks is the sound that comes off of a boardwalk as you're riding over it. That's a whole nother side of things. It's kind of the audible side of trail design, and and the experience of riding through a forested woodland on an elevated trail is really a special experience. And then, balance elements, where like a teeter-totter element, those can be incorporated also. Just adds more, another layer of kind of excitement and opportunity. Logs are great natural feature to provide some skill development and challenge as well. Next slide. And then, adaptive trail considerations. So one thing, we all know about the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that dictates a lot of things related to paved sidewalks and other elements in our built environment. Less known is kind of adaptive cycling, and it is quite popular. There are a lot of people out there that do use these adaptive bicycles, or they basically use hand pedals to move the vehicles forward. Adaptive bicycles can virtually go on any trail a normal bicycle can go on, with some exceptions. But they're really capable machines that can pretty much go anywhere. They only require some small considerations. And one, perfect example is that image in the middle, where you can see one bike wheel is over that piece of horizontal wood. If that bridge had been made just 6 inches wider, that cyclist wouldn't be in a situation where that wheel could potentially go off the side. So those are the kind of things you want to consider, is like the width of a bridge, or the width between two trees. And those are kind of the limit. Those are the only things you kind of need to consider to make a trail truly adaptive. But just like any other person using a trail, there are different skill levels, right? So you have an adaptive cyclist who might be more of a beginner, and you might have an adaptive cyclist that's more of an expert. And those are really kind of the limitations from an adaptive cycling standpoint. But it is something that to consider, and that it would be beneficial, I think, to incorporate some of those considerations into at least some of the trails on the site. Next slide. And then I guess, my final thoughts are, thinking about, bike park design really comes down to understanding the site, understanding the users and what they want to kind of take away from the bike park. Being on an island in particular, you don't have a lot of options when it comes to a bike park, so we want to try and make this bike park as exciting as possible so it doesn't become stale to the users over time. So that is, I think, a big goal, and it's a particularly challenging goal, is to provide a really broad range of elements that's going to keep it fresh and exciting, for a long time. And then, as Brian mentioned earlier, the environment is, I think, a critical component to all this, and blending the bike park elements into the natural landscape, the natural surroundings, is key in both user experience as well as sustainability and environmental impact of a facility like this. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Ellen to talk a little bit more about other features of the bike park.
Great, thanks, Chef. So all exciting features that could be included. But we also just want to talk about a few other elements that could be for this park. It's that I think we were all envisioning this as a community space for a good space for the biking community, so that if there is opportunities for gathering, if it's small events or even just larger groups that tend to meet here at the same time, if we should be providing a space for this, maybe it's quite a bit larger where you could have a hosted event by the biking community here, or even for some of the smaller ones as well. But if this means kind of a little structure or some of the spaces built into it, something we've been talking about is how there might be little spaces throughout the site that have smaller gathering, and then something that's a bit bigger that's mixed in with all these elements too. It doesn't only provide a space for the biking community, but it could provide spaces for people, say a parent bringing their child, like we were saying, that there's a spot for them to come to if they aren't into biking as much, to watch, to feel like they're a part of the action as well, or see some of it, so that those elements are built in. Something we're considering is if lighting should be a part of the site, or if maybe this is something that shuts down at a certain, or is just closed at a certain period. And then kind of some of the things that you need or might need, if how big or how much parking that is going to have to be associated with this site. It's great that this is connected to such a big trail network. With biking, that could be a great opportunity for people to get to the site that way from many different locations. And then even incorporating some things like the walking loop or ways to walk around. If there's people coming here that aren't necessarily biking as much, but could still use the space and walk around the space as well. And I think that's so. Just to reiterate, so that's everything we were going to go through. We just end with this slide just to reiterate what Brian had talked about. So we're just in this first phase. We are trying to get feedback from everyone. Everything is still to see what the community wants to have in the space. So we're going to have discussion after this. We're going to take all of this feedback along with, I have a survey right after this, and then we're going to start to draw them out on plans to create a few concepts or options for what we can do to the site, and then we'll come back and present them to the community with the goal of early August, so that we could get more feedback then, and then they're updated again. So it's going to be a continual process as we're going through this to keep getting feedback from the community, so this becomes a spot that everyone loves. So the next part, we were just going to have an open discussion. We have a few questions on here, but we're really open to any thoughts or anything about anything that we have presented so far or otherwise. And then we also have a survey. So even if you are here today and we start talking about some of the specifics with this, we still want everyone to get on and take the survey, send it to your friends, tell everyone about it. We'd love to get more feedback. It kind of just goes over some of the basics, but then also leaves has some options for just open comment. If there's anything else that you'd feel like you'd want to reiterate, or it would just be great to have that all down. So I think we can open it up, and I'm pretty sure we could probably just, it's a small group, so we could probably just talk out if there is anyone who has any questions about it, the park or the site or anything that we've gone over.
Yeah, if people want to type questions too, they can add questions in the chat as well, or we can just answer any questions or comments you have. And it looks like Emma put in the chat a link to the survey as well. And as Ellen said, we strongly encourage you to complete the survey, even if you participated tonight, and also pass it along. The more feedback we get, the better we can tailor this project to the community specific needs, in particular, the biking community. Any questions or comments?
Oh yeah, there were a couple things that were mentioned that I really liked, and I just wanted to like highlight that I agree with them. It was sort of like keeping the interest in the bike park, and I think of the skate park here in Nantucket that's like the most equivalent thing. And I've noticed in my experience and like a lot of other of my peers' experience that it's just not at the scale to keep the interest like over the years. Like you can go there for like 3 years and then it gets a little boring after a while. And so yeah, just having like these different skill levels like that was mentioned, and I really agree that that's like a great system. And along that same line is also relating it to the skate park is that there's not dedicated spaces for different skill levels. So it makes it a little tough for when like a family comes with their children and they want to ride around and have fun, but then also somebody who's maybe a more advanced skater or rider wants to come and also share the space, and like the etiquette and the skill levels just aren't shared, and it gets a little complicated, and we don't want anyone getting hurt. So I think definitely like dedicated skill levels and spaces for different skill levels is a good idea.
Thanks, Oscar. That was good feedback. Anyone else? Don't be shy.
I just want to say, and I just put it in the chat, that if anybody, after this meeting, after we, leave the meeting and things come to mind, ideas or questions or whatever, please feel free to email me. I put my email in the chat with any questions. And if I don't have the answer, I will get them for you. Or if you have some ideas you want to pass along, or people other biking enthusiasts, we really do want to spread the word and get as much feedback and involvement and enthusiasm for this amazing project. And love to hear Oscar's excellent insights. Just feel free to email me, and I will get you your input will be given to the design team, in the planning committee, and we really value the public's participation in this process.
Eleanor, will the land bank, will you be hosting a space on your website for this project as well? And if people want to watch the recording, where can they do that?
Emma is going to unmute and explain. Emma's our outreach coordinator guru.
Yes, I will create a web page for this project, and I can put the Zoom recording right there, and I will plan to email that link out to everyone who registered, so folks who couldn't make it can see that. And for all of you, like Eleanor said, if nothing's coming to mind now, but it does later, then you'll know exactly how to reach us.
Or you can let other people know who maybe didn't register and didn't attend tonight that if they're interested, they can go to the website, watch the first presentation, and take the survey. It would be great if we get a lot of feedback on the survey. As I mentioned earlier, it's always very helpful for us as designers to receive that feedback from the community.
And
Always
Brian,
makes it a
I
better
would love
project.
to have you and Ellen add to the survey if possible. I know maybe it's too late now to do it, but to find out from people, I thought this would be a good time for people to meet, and maybe I was wrong about that, but to sort of gauge from, everybody's working and everyone's busy and we're all spread thin. But to maximize participation, what is the best kind of time of day on a work day for people to attend these types of meetings, which generally last about an hour? So I just want to be sure that we're mindful of people's busy schedules and what works for people. I know I see several people on here on other committees, boards, and they're already spending a lot of time in meetings. Again, we want to be mindful of that.
Sure, I think we can do that pretty easily, and then we can let people provide feedback on the best time for future meetings.
Thank you.
We have a hand up, Elise Norton.
Thank you guys for organizing this meeting, and I just wanted to say that I'm really excited about this project for the Nantucket community. I want to reiterate what Oscar was saying, that the skate park we have, which is very small, is really the only kind of comparable space that we have on the island for, you know, bikers of all ages. And so this is going to be really excellent for the community to have something fresh and new. So thank you again.
Thanks, Elise. That's nice to hear.
Does anyone have comments or feedback on any of the materials we are thinking of using, or any of the specific features? If there's anything that you definitely want to see there, we definitely want to hear that now, or vice versa, anything that you don't care about. Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute and let us know.
And the survey does have an additional comment section. So if, again, after this, you think of something.
I have a comment. One thing that we didn't really talk about is a difference between this bike park and the skate park is what it branches out to. So the skate park is kind of its own isolated, self-contained location, where the bike park sort of becomes a hub that then branches out to the bike trails throughout the moors and throughout Nantucket, and prepares kids, adults to be able to ride any kind of mountain bike trail off island, you know, Massachusetts, Vermont, the other places that you go. So you can develop those skills on island that can then be transferred off island. And the skills that you develop at the bike park are the same skills you would need to ride a mountain bike around the moors. And, you know, there's some pretty technical trails in the moors. And we've past 2 years have had the Bat-tacular mountain bike race. And, you know, you see people crashing and going over the handlebars left and right. And this kind of bike park would make those kind of races even though they're on Nantucket, more accessible to a wider variety of people and also safer. So, you know, that's one little difference between the skate park and a bike park. And we also talked about how sometimes people might say get on their mountain bikes, meet at the bike park, warm up, and then hit the trail, head into the moors, and then come back to the bike park and head home. So it's not only caters to like your BMXers, you know, with some nice big jumps, 6 foot tall, hopefully, things like that, and pump track and stuff that is smooth and easy to ride, but caters to the mountain bike group and other people too, and then branches into the rest of the island.
Thanks, John. That's a good distinction between the two, that you do have all of this surrounding trail network. And the bike path as well that's on the road.
That's an excellent.
We
point.
have looks like Joseph Topham has his hand up.
Oh, thanks, sir. Yeah, I just want to kind of echo what John just said. You know, one of the things when I first met with Rachel at the site was basically, you know, everyone on Nantucket, you know, like is riding, vast majority of them meet at the Rotary. And then from there we go to Old South Road and then go behind the land bank, kids bike park that they play in, and there's jungle gyms, etc. But behind there's a trail that leads you, you know, almost right across the street from this area. So I thought it was like really great, you know, beyond the bike path, and then go in and there's little windy trails behind that, you know, playground into the woods. The trail is called Strava, and then you go into this would be great, and to work on your skills, kind of get really warmed up and technical, and then kind of drop into the moors and keep riding. I think would really, you know, be a great connector. And I thought that this site would be really fantastic. And I know you guys looked at everything, but I think this is going to be used the most on the island. And I think this is going in a great direction. So I just want to thank you all. I'm excited to see what comes of this.
When we've been really lucky to have some awesome people be on the bike park advisory committee so far, and they're all thankfully very willing to continue on in this process. We really appreciate.
Anything else from anyone? Well, I would say thank you everyone who came. Thanks for your input, and let's try to share this survey far and wide.
Yes, Danielle, grab it.
Yeah, Joe, you too. You've certainly got the network.
I'm gonna pass it around. I'll pass it around.
You do-
Danielle's got everyone. Danielle's like, I mean, she's got everyone in the fitness community knows Danielle or reaches out to her, who's coming to the island.
Yeah.
This is gonna be great, and I'm looking forward to the next meeting. So.
And then Oscar, you can pass it on to your cohorts.
Definitely will.
Thank you. All right, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll
This
have
was
another
great.
one.
Thank Thanks, everyone.
All right, have a good night.
Thank
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you.
night.
You.
Bye.